Have you ever wondered how one tiny, seemingly insignificant mistake could literally alter the trajectory of human history? Well, today, in this explainer, we're diving into exactly that. We're looking at 1666, when a single mundane spark burned away an old world and paved the way for a brand new one. Let's look at the Great Fire of London, from spark to stone.
So how did one baker's tiny mistake reshape one of the world's greatest cities forever? Seriously, it sounds like a Hollywood movie pitch, right? But this is 100% real history. We are talking about a massive, citywide catastrophe that changed the literal footprint of London forever. And the craziest part? It all started right in a kitchen. Section 1. A Spark Ignites Pudding Lane. Our story begins in the very early morning hours of September 2nd, 1666, right inside a small bakery. And you know, things escalated incredibly quickly. During the early hours of September 2nd, the fire breaks out. The baker, Thomas Ferner, actually claimed he had put his ovens out, but the historical record shows that a stray spark still ignited some nearby straw. And from there, it was just chaos. The flames spread so rapidly, burning completely out of control from September 2nd all the way until it finally ended on September 6th. That is 4 agonizing days of continuous burning.
Section 2. A recipe for disaster. So you're probably wondering, how does a single spark turn into a massive 4-day inferno? We really have to look at the environmental conditions of the era.
London back in 1666 was basically a giant tinderbox. First off, the buildings were mostly constructed out of highly flammable wood. On top of that, these structures were packed so incredibly close together along these extremely narrow streets. I mean, a fire could literally just jump from one side of the road right to the other. Add in some strong winds pushing those flames from house to house, and wow! Combine the wood, the tight geography, and that wind, you have the absolute perfect storm for a huge disaster. And yet the city's leadership showed just unbelievable arrogance in the face of all this. The mayor, Sir Thomas Bloodworth, severely underestimated the danger. In fact, he famously delivered this shockingly crude quote saying, "A woman could urinate it out." Yeah, he genuinely thought it was just a minor blaze. Obviously, that's a decision he would deeply, deeply regret as he watched his entire city burn to the ground. Section 3. Fleeing a devastating inferno. Because the leadership totally failed to act, those initial attempts to stop the blaze with mere buckets of water were entirely useless, and that's when the real panic set in. You really have to try and imagine the intense human element of this tragedy. The buckets are failing, the wind is just whipping the fire into an absolute frenzy, and everyday citizens quickly realized they just couldn't fight it. So what did they do? They loaded whatever belongings they could fit onto carts and they fled toward the River Thames. Honestly, hoping to escape by boat was pretty much their only real chance against those uncontrollable flames. To really wrap our heads around the sheer scale of the destruction over those 4 days, we only need to look at one absolutely staggering number: 13,000. That is 13,000 houses completely destroyed by the flames. I mean, think about that scale. And the losses didn't stop there either. 87 churches were burned entirely to the ground, and that includes the massive St. Paul's Cathedral. Gone. But here is a deeply fascinating, kind of mysterious detail from our source material. Remarkably, the official records list only a handful of deaths, like single digits. But come on, historians believe the real number of casualties must have been much, much higher, especially among the poor, whose deaths simply went unrecorded in all the chaos. Section 4. Rebuilding a Stronger London. Once the smoke finally cleared after 4 days, London was essentially a blank slate of ashes. But from that destruction came a really optimistic transition. It was time to rebuild. Now, we really can't talk about this massive rebuilding effort without bringing up Christopher Wren. He was the visionary architect who stepped up to the plate here. He spearheaded the city's transformation, turning it from that wooden tinderbox we talked about into a true modern marvel. Let's compare the two. Pre-1666 London was defined by highly flammable wood buildings and those super tight, narrow, crowded streets. But post-fire London, they transitioned completely to fire-resistant stone buildings and much wider, significantly safer streets. Wren and the other city planners realized, okay, we absolutely cannot repeat the mistakes of the past, and that directly led to a safer, stronger, and much more resilient city. Which brings us to our final thought for today. The leaders back in 1666 looked at a literal spark in a wooden city, and they completely ignored the threat until it was just way too late. So it makes you wonder, What hidden dangers in our own modern cities are we underestimating today? Because as history shows us, a single overlooked spark can literally change everything. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep learning, keep questioning, and I'll see you next time.